Welcome to The Curated Craftsman, a podcast where we'll learn about the hands, head, and heart behind creative entrepreneurs just like you. Kate Cook is the artistic drive behind Asphalt Canvas Custom Art and your host for this conversation about art, business, and belief.
Hey guys, today we are getting to know the hands, head, and heart behind BOMONSTER, a hot rod artist that specializes in scratchboard technique art that captures the art of speed in a bold and innovative way. Based in northern Arizona, Bo travels the country with his wife, whom he lovingly calls Mrs. BOMONSTER, creating and selling his artwork of all kinds at car shows and large music festivals. His work highlights the playful stories of builders, bike owners, and car lovers who live life in their own lane and have fun doing it. Welcome, BOMONSTER. Thank you for joining us on the Curated Craftsman podcast. To begin with, I think a lot of our listeners probably don't know what scratchboard art is. And so I was hoping that if you could describe like what kind of art you make and then the technique that you do to make that artwork.
Well, scratchboard is a black ink board, and I'm scratching with a knife, and it reveals the white layer underneath. So the end result is a lot of white lines on a black background.
Okay, and so do you use like specific knives made for those boards, or is it just a kitchen knife or pocket knife? How do you actually make the white lines?
Well, it's an X-Acto knife, and
Oh.
X-Acto knife blade is the number 16 blade, which is got a point and a little beveled edge that I can scrape a lot of material off the board. And they make scratchboard kits like with little half rounds and triangles and coarse blades. But I find that I use one blade because it helps define my style, so I can go thick and thin. And I just have found that this one blade works for me. And again, it helps to define the look that I've created.
Wow, that's so interesting. I think I actually have seen those kits at like Hobby Lobby, you know. They're very small kits usually. The ink board is only like a postcard size most of the time. But some of the work you have on your website is huge. So do you like make those boards or do you buy them specially somewhere?
You know, it used to be way back in high school, which was one of the first time I saw and experienced and did scratchboard. We would make boards. It's like a piece of white clay coat, and we do a little black ink, Higgins ink, either rolled on or airbrushed on, and then start scratching the surface. These days, they make a board all prepped and ready to go. You're buying a black board with a nice black smooth surface, and then just start scratching.
Oh man, that is so cool. I did not realize you could make your own, but it makes sense. Like it sounds silly, but you remember those kids crafts that had like the rainbow colors on the background and then like the chalk over top of it or whatever that material was that was black and you could scratch out these weird psychedelic designs. That's what I'm thinking of.
That's exactly what it is. And it's funny when we're at our shows, and I'll ask if anybody knows, I'll ask if someone knows what scratchboard is. And the ones that do know are art teachers and artists like ourselves, or maybe they did it in high school and they did one and they still have it, or their mom still has it in the attic and they never did another one, or little kids. And kids got that rainbow scratching where we used to do, when we made our own crayons, just wildly randomly colored crayons. And then you could put India ink over that and scratch off the India ink and see the rainbow color underneath. So
Oh
uh,
man.
scratchboard might be more familiar than we realize, when you start thinking of it in terms of little kid projects and scratcher projects
Well,
and
that's so true. And I think the unique thing about it, I do remember doing a project like this, in high school. It was a very small board. And basically we were learning about negative space. And so like I think a lot of people it's kind of funky when you think about how you have to look at it. So like you and I could be painting the same car, but I'm painting the shadows and you're scratching the shadows out. Is that right?
a lot of people think it's like a backwards kind of a thought process,
Yes.
and try to keep it simple in my own mind. I'm scratching where the light hits and I leave the shadows alone. And
Okay.
and you think about it from a tattoo artist standpoint, I spend my time just designing the piece, and I transfer just an outline shape the way a tattoo artist will transfer just an outline shape. He's with his black pen, he or she are going for like the shadows and the dark areas, and I'm going for the light areas, leaving the shadows alone. So I think of it, chasing light basically.
Wow, that is such a unique perspective on something that most people wouldn't, even consider. But if you think about it, if you did it in the reverse, the whole picture would look like a negative.
Well, that's true, and that's what'll happen if you make art for a t-shirt silkscreen print.
Okay.
You got to make a negative, and then all the ink is going to go through that negative area where it'll be a black line, but it'll end up well, like all the white will hit my shirt, my black shirt. Where I scratch it has to be a negative for the ink to go through to see. And when I look at it in a negative form,
Mhm.
it looks too simple. It almost like looks like there's not enough there to even be a detailed image. But
Right, right. That is
yeah,
so, oh man, we're getting into the art nerd
art
weeds
talk, I
quickly.
love it.
Yes, I do too. And well, it's just so cool because you don't, I mean, I personally, I've never seen a professional artist like primarily work in this format. So it's just, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast to kind of like hopefully share with a lot of people this art form maybe that they haven't seen before. Um, how do you get the imagery? Like I imagine you sketch it out, but then how do you get the sketch onto the board if the board is black?
Graphite is one way,
Okay.
and just like graphite on the back, and then transfer it, by redrawing your drawing on the top layer. You can see
Okay.
the graphite. Sometimes I'll draw a little bit on there with the graphite on the black, and wipe it away later. But that's one of the ways I do it.
Okay, yes, I don't want to reveal all your secrets, but that is something that I was thinking because I remember that was mind-blowing to me whenever I figured out how to transfer my sketch onto like a metal or something. It was like I found the trick, the secret behind how to do that. So,
Okay.
well, with all that said, so then so do you have an art background? Like how did you get into scratchboard art? Like what was your first dip in the water with scratchboard art?
It wasn't that long ago. It was, 10 or 11 or 12 years ago. I just for fun, I remember doing a scratchboard piece in high school and liking it. And I did some hot rods and motorcycles just for my own enjoyment. I posted them, Jalopy Journal. They had a Friday art show for a while. It was really, really good and fun to watch. And the other artists that were also good. I just submitted it almost anonymously. And I had so much response for people. They like it, they want to see more. And if you put that on a shirt, I'd buy it. And so it kind of pulled me into the scene in an organic, natural, fan encouraged way. And it's gone far beyond what I didn't really have any plans to be the artist. I was just kind of having fun with something I liked and got pulled into it.
Wow, that is so cool. So, I mean, you said 2011, so that's not very long at all. I mean,
I think
that's
so.
amazing. So, do you have a degree in art at all?
No, self-taught.
Wow.
But my background, I was in advertising, LA ad agencies for a career plus freelance. And and you don't really get to be the artist when you're an art director. And I've worked on clients like Apple and Porsche and Acura and Honda and tons of clients. And when you're the art director, you're being paid for your ideas. So you have to communicate your idea somehow. So I wasn't really the accomplished illustrator. I was a really good uh, thumbnail blown up into storyboard size frames guy. So I could draw an outline shape and if you had an idea like cars in a mountain and it goes through a tunnel and it exits the tunnel and he's in the city. Well, you can write that in a script form, but to present it to a client, it has to be visualized. And these days, I know there's a ton of ways to do it that's a lot different than the way I did it, primarily these days through AI.
Mhm.
But I would draw a simple drawing of, car on mountain road, here comes tunnel, and then to a photographer, he's got to know when a wide angle going in, a long lens going out. So, the tunnel gets bigger quick, and then a cityscape. So if you draw simple thumbnails, it communicates the idea to a director or a photographer. And that was my background. I'd always admired real illustrators, and I'd always painted on the side and had fun, just fooling around like as a hobbyist would. But I really started dedicating myself in the last 12, 13 years.
Oh, I love that you brought that up because when I was looking at your website and stuff, of course, I went through your blog and I saw one of your blogs about Hang 10, that you were one of the artists for the art directors on Hang 10, which if y'all get a chance, and maybe we can put the link to this blog in the podcast description, but Can you talk a little bit about that collaboration with that brand? Because that was a very iconic brand in conjunction with all the other ones you just mentioned. But
Well, it was my first, call it a big campaign that I did, hired out of school. And
wow.
10 was going through a resurgence of a, brand popularity, and we worked for the company that was licensing the brand The Two Little Feet
Yeah.
for t-shirt products and swim trunk product, apparel products, I guess. And so our idea was it's all about those 2 feet. That's all anybody could remember about Hang 10 were those two bare feet logo. So I had the idea of putting in a sports context, water ski. Well, the splash from the boat would be 2 feet, like the water hanging in the air
Love
would
that.
be 2 big feet, or skiing down a mountain and the feet would be embedded in the snow, rocks, and whatnot. So that was my idea. But then back to being able, as an art director, it's just communicating, illustrating a real simple line drawing. But I had hired a studio called Willardson White, Dave Willardson and Charlie White, and they'd done a lot of rock covers, and I think Supertramp album was one of theirs. And so back in the day, they did really great airbrush illustrations. So I would got the approval from the client. I would take them my drawings and give them enough research to, start the illustration, a blown engine ski boat, and that kind of thing. And I got to watch them develop these ideas. So the funny story about that is we did a series of them, and they ran in Surfer Magazine. They were poster pullouts, and they ran in, men's magazines and sport magazines for a while. And it was cool. I was very proud of it, and had fun thinking of it and watching these really good illustrators make it come together, make it happen. But I was in an antique store. My wife and I were in an antique store, like in San Diego, and we were walking through, and my designs have been put on tins, and they're being sold like as an antique or like memorabilia. It's like, wait a minute. I'm old enough to have something that I've created be in an antique store.
Oh, I
So
freaking love that.
bought it. I bought them both, and it was like either I was buying them thinking, all right, I'm going to take it off the wall so nobody knows they're antiques, or I'm just going to get it because I think they're cool. So
Oh, heck yeah. And had you had any of the artwork prior to that, like that in your ownership of like any of the tins before that, buying them in the antique store?
no, no, that was the first time I'd seen anything that I'd created.
Oh, that's
Per-
hilarious.
Yeah, so I'm thinking I'm gonna tell the cashier I'm the guy that thought of this. But I'm thinking she just look at me like, yeah, right,
Yeah.
big deal. So
She's
I
like this
didn't
crazy old guy.
I didn't bring it up. I used to work for a creative director, and he was a contemporary art collector, a big collector in LA, and famous people went to his home that had been converted into a art gallery, and he's very well known. And so I went there as a guest, and was really impressed by the collection. But he told me something that was kind of interesting. He said, if you really ever want to be a successful fine artist, you got to think in terms of a campaign. So you have one idea like blue dog, and you just draw that blue dog in all the in 100 different ways. He goes, but if you have a really good idea, make 30 of them. And then 30 of them get, 3 in Chicago and 4 in Houston and 9 in New York. And from a fine art perspective,
Hmm.
you could be a hobbyist and just create cool stuff. But if you're Keith Harrington and you have a group of characters and a style that is very simplified and recognizable, well, make 30 of them. And then
Hmm.
from there, you could launch into something, licensing, other opportunities, doors open and what have you. But so I've always looked at fine art from a beyond a collector's point of view, more from a creating point of view. If you have an idea, you are now like a fine artist creating a campaign of a series of executions, based on one concept.
That really
Mm.
simplifies it because, as an artist myself, when I first opened, I was like everything in the kitchen sink. Like I was drawing everything, painting everything, taking on all kinds of different projects and stuff, which I'm glad I did because I learned a lot. It helped me narrow down what I maybe was best at or most enjoyed. But I definitely can tell, like, once you get that narrowed, whether it's your medium or your imagery, I think once you get that narrowed down and you just, like you said, can make a bunch of the same, not the same, but the similar things that can all hang in the same room and have the same feeling, your audience becomes a little bit more aware of what you do. Like they're not as confused, I think.
and you're a good example of your series, She's Been Everywhere, man. I think is a great example of that because you're painting different locations, different models, different cars, and one can have a rockabilly sense, and one can have an outdoor Western rodeo sense, and one can have a beach sense. So you, as an artist, get to explore different themes and areas,
Right.
but all within this umbrella idea of She's Been Everywhere, man.
Right.
So from a viewer standpoint, oh, that's Kate Cook, like it's recognizable. And you could
Right.
have done one and then done another scene of in a a mountainscape or another abstract painting or another whatever. And
Yes.
when you're all over the board, it's
Yes.
hard to be defined and it's hard to be recognized. So
Yes.
uh,
Well, and that leads me to ask, have you ever dabbled in any other art form outside of scratchboard art, or has that pretty much been your go-to?
as a hobbyist, yes.
Yes,
And
yeah.
it's like doing one or two of a thing and moving on. I will say before I did the scratch board, I would paint acrylics.
Okay.
And as we know, we can be our most, harshest critics and too self-critical of work. And my work was always tight. And I just never really accomplished what I want. It always looked just too stiff. And I did desert landscapes, and I did old signs on roads, and I did desert sunsets and dirt roads, and I had fun with that because I just liked the outdoor world.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and but then I moved into an area, and it was all for fun. I moved to an area of using palette knives with acrylic paint, and that was a way of loosening up my style, just looking at my own work and not being satisfied and wondering where I could go. So I started painting with palette knives. And then it's naturally looser, in
Yeah,
terms
you
of,
can't really be detailed with that.
yeah. So I got into Route 66 signs and old cars were kind of in the background, but I wasn't really thinking they were car illustrations. It was more discovering these places along Route 66. I did a series of those just because being from advertising, I started thinking in terms of series but not to
Right.
sell and not to share, not to really, but I've always done some artwork on my own.
Oh, I
Just
love that.
pen and ink is another favorite that I did. So I've always
Interesting.
done hobbyist kind of work. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's so cool. I mean, I'd love to see him. I know your Route 66 scratch art, like the scratch art that you've done from Route 66. That's actually what I saw when I very first even found you or saw your art, which was years ago now. But I remember because my family is huge into Route 66. We love traveling that road, and we have a lot of family generational stories from that whole area and scene. And so that's definitely what pulled me into your work. But I love the perspective of that, and I think it'll help other people because I do have a lot of friends that are starting out that have businesses that are doing a lot of different types of art, and they're kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what fits, which I think there's a season that you need to definitely do that. But you need to get out of that season too, I think. Otherwise, you're just going to be like going crazy trying to figure out, okay, well, this person likes this and this person likes this. Not to say that you're doing the art for the other people, but you do have to figure out who likes your art and where your audience is.
I have done personal commission pieces for people, and sometimes it'll be something along the lines of like a pet. And
Yeah.
you do a pet, and all of a sudden, first of all, there's power in what we do when you do somebody's passed away or living pet, and you hand it to them, and it always brings a tear. I mean, it's emotional and it's strong. It's like quite the thing. From a business standpoint, you think I could do pets for the rest of my life and
Oh my
make it.
gosh, yes.
But I don't get that much satisfaction out of it. It's like I could do that, but I
Yes.
don't want to do that. I want to do what I want to. I recognize the power and I recognize, it could be emotional for the owner, but
Yes.
as a business, if I had like 8 in a row that I needed to do, my heart wouldn't be in it, I admit. So,
Yes,
uh,
and that's so challenging because you know that that could be like the money maker. Like that's the easy money. People are going to come to you for that. Like for instance, so we have this old cutout of a Santa Claus, like a full body Santa Claus that's like from the 60s that my mom's had forever. She passed it down to me, put it out in the front yard this year, and this year I finally was like, I'm going to repaint this thing because it is ugly and it needs repainting. So I in like one night in under an hour, I just slapped some acrylic paint on this thing and sprayed it with clear and it was done. And more, my husband, I put out in the living room. I said, I finally repainted the Santa and put our names on the little naughty and nice list that he's holding. And Morgan's like, you could sell those. You could freaking sell those, and I could cut them out for you, and we could sell them. And I was like, that sounds like a nightmare. Like I do not want to paint 25 Santa Clauses. So it's
That's
good. And I guess it's a privilege to be able to choose, that concept. Like I can choose to say, like, I'm not going to paint those, but at the same time, if you start that without setting the line and saying like I'm not doing this, if you start that, you're going to be known for that. So you have to be really careful what you say yes to and what you can say no to.
better like what you're doing because you're going to be doing it for a lot longer than you think.
I will be interviewing a bunch of different types of craftsmen, and I love to hear their version of what they think defines good or bad craftsmanship.
It's funny for me, craftsmanship is one of those things you see it, you know it when you see it, and you know bad craftsmanship when you see it. And bad craftsmanship might be sloppiness and laziness and unprofessional and easy and not appealing and call it cringeworthy. Good craftsmanship could look professional and detailed and accurate and all that. So on one level, I look at it that way, professional, unprofessional. But on another level, in lowbrow art, in contemporary art, there's so many styles and so many intentional styles that some could look naive, some could look simplified. And I've thought a lot about this in my own style. Brow and contemporary art and outsider art and beatnik art or whatever you want to call it, it's forgiving and like you just accept it for what it is. And
Yes,
so
yeah, it is what it is. Yes,
is what it is, and you like it or you don't like it. And
yes,
there's a lot of artists that they kind of fall in that category. So for me, I think if I can visualize a good underdrawing underneath that sloppy mess, or a good underdrawing under that quick, expressive, almost abstract kind of a view, if I can envision a good underdrawing under that art, I appreciate it. And I think that's always been a little bit of my test. A car could be inaccurately drawn, but you could like the character of it, and it looks like speed, and it looks like it's going fast, and it looks like a hot rod or a jalopy or whatever, you just buy it. So I think that's my test is there was thought put in before it went crazy on the canvas.
yeah. I love that. It reminds me of like know the rules before you can break them type of a thing.
Yeah,
So you're looking for that like clean drawing, and then if the artist has this, they have the skills for that drawing, then they can put their own flair on it. And I love that description. That's really really cool. So in that case, then, do you consider yourself a craftsman?
the funny thing is I'm thinking, I'm very much self-taught, go my own way, use a single knife blade, not a whole kit, I kind of have my style.
Yes.
And out of that, I do at least one a week. I mean, one or two a week. I'm always creating small or big. I'm always creating something. And just naturally, because I've been doing it for, 10 years or so, seriously, I'm getting better. And every once in a while, I will do like a reflection on a bumper or a piece of glass or just a tree form.
Yeah.
I will be so impressed that my hand created that because it's lifelike or photographic or something. I'll look at it and go, wow, that looks realistic. But then the thought I have is like, that wasn't my goal. My style, and I'll tell you what my goal is as stylistically, I want my art to look like a kid did it in high school who could draw really, really good. That's how I define my style. I don't use straight edges and triangles and T-squares and everything it starts the underdrawing is a straight line, but my scratching is got a little wiggle to it and it's a little bit inaccurate and it's a little bit, overlapping lines and the axle doesn't exactly fit in the middle of the wheel, things like that. So that's my way of loosening up my style. And like I said, my goal is to make it look like somebody much younger did it who could draw really, really good.
That is so cool and very inspiring to me to hear you talk about you understand your craft so well. You understand your style so well, and I'm just now blossoming into that with my own artwork. So it's very inspiring to me to hear you say like these little things that you've noticed. Well, that is really good, but it's not how I want to be represented in what I'm making. And so you can alter that and change it. You're the craftsman to be able to do that. So you say you make two pieces 1 to 2 pieces a week. We're living in a tough time in the world. How do you create those scratchboard pieces 1 to 2 a week? How do you create those when you're going through something really difficult in life? Do you have a way that you handle that?
That's an interesting question in that on one hand, we're the professional that just keeps moving forward. It's the writer who just writes every day, no matter what, or the
Right.
songwriter who writes no matter what.
Right.
I'm going through a situation right now, like an extended family hardship. And we pray as a family by Zoom or by phone or by text or whatever, and families in on it. And then when you hang up or the call stops, now it's like you can sit all day on that sad feeling or that hardship feeling. But what would be the point would be a very logical, rational way of approaching it because you've done what you can do. And all of us, we've all kind of talked about this recently, is that we go make art or we go to you got to do a job. You got to be there for your clients and your people. Life goes on. And I think as I'm just sort of thinking aloud here, for myself, if I get myself involved in one of my pieces, I'm daydreaming and I'm creating the thing that I want to create. But at the same time, I'm rolling through family members and friends and hardships and things that I got. But somehow my hands are moving and still creating the desired outlook. So perhaps for me, it's just a way of bringing some stillness to my mind, bringing some appreciation. I'm always thankful for, blessings in my life that I can dwell on while I'm scratching. I don't listen to music and I don't really, everything's real quiet when I'm working. Everything's like in a real quiet space and it's usually late at night. And so it just gives me that chance to reflect and to be appreciative and be thankful and not worry so much because I've got a task at hand. That was a long way of saying maybe I just use it as a little bit of a therapeutic outlet, my art.
Wow. And that goes for even if you're working on client artwork as well.
Yes, and that's because I only take on projects I really want to do that I really
Absolutely.
appreciate. I like the client. I have said no to a few pieces, and or I'll be working with a client that's very difficult. Also, I got like a list of 25 things has to be put into the picture, and it's like, yeah, I could do it, but I really don't want. I don't like to suffer through my projects, no matter what the budget is. I really want to enjoy it. And so, yeah, so no matter if it's a client piece or a personal piece, I'm always, I can daydream along the way and appreciate that time.
I totally resonate with what you just said. I think that is so cool because I totally get what you're saying. It's like your hands are moving and your mind is moving, but it's weird. It's like it's a state of it's a state of mindlessness. My husband and I were kind of talking about this like the other day. We went to a monster truck rally with our son and my husband came home and he said, "Wow, it's just so good to be mindless." I was like, "That's what kids feel all the time." I get to feel that pretty frequently in my life, and it's such a blessing because of my art. I get to sit down and when I'm working on paintings, I kind of just get lost in it. And it's not to say that I'm not thinking. Like I'm exactly the same way as you. I'm like praying or I'm mulling over something that I need to make a decision on, but it's a very peaceful state. It's very weird.
Well, if you get too absorbed into everything that's going wrong, it will affect your mental outlook and you won't be
Mhm.
able to move forward yourself. And then what good does that serve anybody?
Yes.
There's a great verse in terms of a great biblical verse. You're in such a thankful mode, and you're rejoicing constantly. And out of that, Jesus will give you a peace that transcends understanding. Well, that very word peace that transcends understanding means I don't understand it, but I'm at peace because I gave it to the Lord. I've sometimes read that verse and I thought, well, the Bible doesn't really explain peace that transcends understanding, but I can tell you by experience, I know exactly what that means. So I think
Wow.
that's a great one that I reflect on quite a bit. And another one, of course, is in Proverbs, which is leaning not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge the Lord and he'll make your path straight. I think about that one too. It's like lean not on my own understanding. Well, my understanding tells me the world's messed up, people are messed up, it doesn't look good, it's only getting worse, and there's this and this and this, all these reasons that I could be depressed and angry and sad and scared, but do not lean on your own understanding, says Proverbs. I think it's 3:5. And I think,
Yes.
well, that's what that means because
Yes.
don't
Yes.
lean on, don't lean on what you think is going to happen. And there's like another like observation in life that somebody has mentioned I thought was pretty good. Like 99% of the things that you worry about never come true. Look back on your life, like that really was true. So
So
trying to learn.
true. Love that. Well, and I saw on your website something that really caught my eye. It was a quote that is on there. It says, "We pray like it's all God and we work like it's all us." I
I do.
love that quote because it makes me think, like, it made me think about it multiple times. Like, okay, what does this mean? So what does that mean to you?
Well, it's funny. I think about there's verses in the Bible that talk about investing money. Farmer gave well, the master gave the slaves like 2 talents, like two, whatever that is, whatever value money
Yeah.
that was. And one went and invested it and earned two more or 10 more, another earned two more, another one just was safe and buried it, and it was like he's doing the safe thing. And he was admonished for not even putting it in the bank and earning interest. But what it tells me is that God is very practical minded in terms of what we're stewards of money, we're stewards of time, we're stewards of gift. But in reality, we have money, and there's a verse in Psalms which talks about, Lord, give me enough where I don't steal. I don't resort to stealing, but don't give me too much so I forget where it came from and I lose sight of that. So the Bible has some very practical financial advice. So I know that God knows we need to make money. I know that God knows we need to make more than we spend and to be good stewards of our investing and taking care of profit and loss. I'm going to work like it's all me. And at the same time, I'm going to pray like it's all God. And I'm not going to pray like it's all God, but do nothing and wonder why nothing ever happened. And I'm not going to work like it's all me and take all the credit and let my pride get out of control. So I think in a nutshell, that's what that means.
Wow, I love that. Thank you for clarifying. I mean, I think everyone can pull a little something from that quote, but I just love that. And I also love too, I should mention this, that quote was inspiring to me because it came after like a long story about how you travel with your wife everywhere. And that's inspiring to me because Morgan, my husband, and I travel everywhere. Whenever we go to shows, he's always my wingman. Like he sets up, helps me. I mean, he is the man behind the curtain, like in Wizard of Oz, you know? But how long have you been married to your wife, Mrs. Beaumonster?
Mrs. Beaumonster and I have been married 46 years.
Wow, congratulations. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it is great. And I will say, I was thinking about, that time when we started and how I got started. I had kind of was thinking that I wanted to take my art out on the road and sell in car shows and sell at music events and whatnot. So before I did that, I was considering it. And I took her to a big drag race at Bakersfield, like the big March meet, and
Oh, I know where that is. Yeah.
was like a fun thing to do. But there were artists there. Max Grundy was there. Keith Wiesner was probably there. Kent Reppert was there. Candy Wild was there. It's like a number of artists were there. Big Toe, I think he was there at that one time. And it's like, I sort of got it in my head, like, I want to do this. I can do this. I think this would be a lot of fun. And we were driving away, we were driving home, and I asked her, I said, I'm kind of thinking I might want to try that. How would you feel if I took, and I put it this way, family money and invested in a number of shirts with my designs on them, invested in some prints with my designs on them, got the canopy and all the stuff that you're going to need to be able to put up and do this. What would you think about that? And it was like, she was like, oh, I think this is a great idea. I'm all for it. Do it. Which I was always, and immediately I thought, I appreciate that so much because there wasn't any arguing. There wasn't any, well, you better think about the down. None of that. None of that. It was like, yeah, yeah, I think we go ahead if you like. Let's just give it a try. And so what I did not realize at that time was how much I was going to need her as a helper. Who's going to
Yes.
take the money? Who's going to process the credit cards? Who's going to be answering a question? And when I'm over here answering another question, completely was not thinking of the scope of that answer when she said, yeah, go ahead, I support that, and let's do it. It went far beyond just giving me the green light. It became, I didn't know she's going to make the hotel reservations and travel with me and go to every single show. But now that she does, I can't imagine doing it without her. So I'll forever be grateful for her for that.
Oh, that's wonderful. I always love to, I always love to chat with her whenever we're at shows together. So, this is a great, I want to really get into talking to you. And I didn't give you a heads up on this, but I'm sure you'll be great on this. I want to talk to you about outdoor vending or just indoor vending, outdoor vending. I know a lot of people that are very envious of your display and how it's set up and the way it's designed and how thoughtfully laid out it is. And I just wanted to maybe talk to you a little bit about if you're talking to somebody that's never set up a display or been at a vendor show, is there some tips maybe that you can give them right off the bat that would help them get started in something like that?
Well, I appreciate everything you just said. I don't think about it as being any better or different or smarter or anything like that than anybody else. I just do
No,
what
I
I
know you don't.
and I'll share with you a little bit of how I think. Before I was the vendor,
Yeah,
I would walk and I would look at everybody's booths because I knew I was going to be doing it in like 6 months or so. So I started thinking like, how will I, what will my booth look like? And
right.
so I started just looking at what people did and how they present themselves. And I noticed a few things. One is uh, artists tend to be uh, loners and and a little bit introverted and are most comfortable creating the art. And
Yes.
I mostly am. I'm not a real talkative person, except for you and I. We're both artists, and so I'm comfortable talking. And I like talking to customers. I like talking to other artists out on the road, so I could be very social within my, you
Your
know,
realm.
my realm, my peer group. Anyway, I saw artists that were sitting in the back corner sketching, and their booth was like nobody was there, and their stuff was laid out. You thought, I know why you're doing that because you feel real good and you feel comfortable and you're a little bit scared. I know that's a fact. And then I would look at the art on a wall and I didn't know what to say to them. I wanted to engage them, but I didn't know quite what to say. So I'd say something, the first thing that popped in mind, oh, how much is that? Because there wasn't a price tag. Oh, well, that's like, $50, $40, 20. And then I thought, well, that's weird. I don't really want it. I just couldn't think of a better question to ask. So I'd ask the price. So what that taught me is put a price on everything.
Yes.
And so my number one rule is let people shop from the aisles. And when I walk up to a booth, I think there's an immediate for me, not for me feeling I have, like an instinct. And it has nothing to do with personal. It's like I don't wish the person ill or anything like
Of
that. It's like
course. Yeah.
I look at it, not for me. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to keep walking.
Right.
And so I set the booth up as if it's all for the people who are in the aisles, like allowing them to shop for that. They're going to see something that looks kind of interesting. I don't know what it is or everything, but it looks kind of interesting. It looks like like I might want to check it out. So I put a price on everything. So I don't want to answer the question, and I want them just to know that's what it is.
Right.
And it'll be a high price, and someone will look at it and say, "I'll take that." And I want to ask them like, you do know that's an original at a much higher price point is what I'm thinking. And or I'll say it in a diplomatic way. And yeah, that's exactly why I want it. So I've gotten over a long time ago, there are people that will pay a high price for things. And then, we get through the show selling, prints for $20 or whatever. So
I love that. So definitely make your vendor space shoppable from the aisles. My
yes,
husband and I call that the watermelon effect because I went into this store and it smelled like watermelon candles. And Morgan looks at me and he goes, "It smells like a chick store in here. I'm leaving." And so
I'll
he
go.
left. And so, and so from then on, like anytime we go into like a vendor space or like a store of any kind, and if it's not for him, he goes, "Watermelon," and he leaves.
Watermelon effect. I can sense it.
Yes.
I see it coming. That's really
Yeah.
true.
So, but yes, and then good price tags. Like Bo's saying that he's putting price tags on it, but they're beautiful. They're beautifully printed price tags. He's not just talking about like a little sticker with a number on it. He actually has his logo on it, from what I can remember, and like a website, and then it looks very clean and professional. And I'm sure that doesn't cost too much to do. So I think that's definitely a good tip for anyone getting started in that.
I will say that one of the best pieces of advice I got starting was from John Mearns of Acme Speed Shop. Look professional, but go in on a shoestring budget, shoestring inventory is what he said, actually. I know how to look professional, just being my background of
Right.
branding and brand building and all that and design. I was at some ad agencies where everything was important. Like if you had like a big TV commercial or a spread ad or a very small ad in the back of a magazine, it was all equally important, in a couple of the shops I worked at. So things like price tags just have to look professional, be clear and like be fun font or whatever. Always thought that was a good advice. So I was trying to remember and pass on to people, look
Yes.
professional, but go in with a shoestring inventory. Nobody knows I've got only 5 of that shirt left or
Hmm.
of that rent left or whatever. So I don't need 100, behind the curtain. It's just a handful of things to get me through a show.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I have a bunch of other questions about shows, but we can come back and do a little like side tip on that because like shows and prints and I know you do a lot of print on demand things and things like that. What I would like to ask you is so I know you do like shows like Viva Las Vegas. I know you've done some really cool like SEMA obviously is a big show. What is your favorite show to do if you have one? Would you mind sharing with?
Well, first of all, I look for the biggest shows with the most amount of people. And
Yes.
not everybody's going to like what I do and what you do, but the larger the show, the more that ratio is going to be, the more that'll be a good sized customer group for us. So I go to the biggest shows I can find. And I go to shows that I want to enjoy myself personally. I want to enjoy the music. I want to enjoy, the motorcycles or the cars or the drag race or whatever we're there. There's shows that I would go on my own because I've done a couple of them where I just sit there all day long and it's like, and now it feels like work. Now it feels like I just want to go home.
Yes.
So I do look for the biggest and best. And I have a number of them that are favorites. Viva Las Vegas is a good one just because it's the rockabilly and girls get dressed up and guys get dressed up and the music gits good. And there's just a great attitude about that show that I like. I like the Boise Roadster show because those people have been waiting all winter with maybe a lot to do. And when this show's in March and it's not a big roadster show, but there's a lot of people that come, and there's
Wow.
a sensibility about people there that they maybe it's a Midwest attitude or an awareness or a thoughtfulness. They're just friendly and they have questions and they're not in a hurry. And then we go to LA shows and Roadster, the Grand National Roadster show is a good one, and the Ventura Nationals are a great one, and
Oh,
the
yes, yeah.
Santa Maria is a good show, and Born Free. I don't have a favorite. I really like all of these shows in different ways. But in California, everybody's in such a hurry. There's a fast pace of life and a fast pace of
Yes.
getting through a show. Walk in, I see what you do. I like you. I like it. I'll take it, and they're gone.
Right.
And I'm generalizing, but when you go to Texas and when you go to Idaho and you go to Washington State, people are not in a hurry, and especially Texas, they want to have some small talk before they talk business. I've seen that everywhere I go in Texas. It's like, we're gonna have a little chat, we're gonna get to know each other a little bit, and we're both at ease, and I'm gonna buy 3 of that thing that you did that I really like. And so it's just that I appreciate human nature and I appreciate how different people can be in different parts of the country. So I honestly like all the shows we go to for different reasons.
That's not the answer I was expecting, so that is super cool. I love that. Is there a client customer that you like a story that you can remember that you'd want to share that is memorable to you, like something that sticks in your head, stands out as that was a cool interaction, or I loved working with that customer or company?
Well, that's the fun of travel and it's the fun of meeting people. I'm always surprised how quickly people open up about their lives and they're meeting a vendor. I'm just a vendor.
Yes.
Before and I have friends and I have repeat customers that have become friends. And I know a little bit about their life and I know a little bit about them that maybe a vendor wouldn't, ordinary vendor, or I didn't know when I first met them. But it's other people that walk in and it always surprises me within maybe like 30 seconds or a minute, you could know something about somebody, good or bad, or something very personal or something very touching. And I always kind of marvel how people open up because I don't. I'm going to keep it to myself, and I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So we do that a lot. We discover that a lot. But one of my favorites are kids, and I've had families say like bring one guy had a little portfolio, and he probably goes, I was wondering if you'd take a look at my son's portfolio. And I look at this guy's like he's like sixth grade or seventh grade, little boy, and he's kind of quiet. And there's one kid. I wonder if you could take a look at his and tell me what you think. Like if he's a good artist, I'm thinking, oh, all right.
Oh
You know,
gosh.
of course he's a good artist, but
Yeah.
how good. And this one kid came in, and I couldn't believe it. Opened up the book. They were fantastic drawings. I mean, they were just like had some cars and had some motorcycles, but had some his parents and his family sitting around the house, and he had some basketball players, and it's like,
Oh,
and it blew me away how good this kid was. And he's like super shy, super quiet, looking at the ground. I'm like one page after another. The best way to talk to the kid is I'm going to talk to the dad and I'm going to say to the dad, and I said, here's the thing. I said, first of all, these are great. These are really like beyond great, great. Your kid is like a
Yeah.
true artist. I said, but here's what kids don't know about themselves and they don't even think about. And then I could sense the kid kind of getting a little bit like he's going to listen in on what he doesn't know or what he doesn't think about.
Yeah.
I go, the problem is kids like your son, they think everybody could do this. They don't know it's special. They don't know that they have a gift of like a very unique thing. They think because they could do it, anybody could do it. And what they don't know is not everybody can do this. And I said the trick will be as a dad, encouraging him to keep it going because he's going to think that because it's not special, he's not going to stay with it. So good
Absolutely.
luck to that. You know,
Yeah,
I'll,
seriously. Good luck with you.
I'll do it in fun, knowing that I'm really talking to the kid, telling him, you're special, you've got a gift, keep it going. But then I said to the kid, I go, but here's what I do like about what you did here. What I'm looking
Yeah.
at, you don't trace. Everything you did, you looked and you drew. I could see, because I see a lot of traces that, someone
Yeah.
will trace the thing and I know where it came from. But I go, you don't trace. You're drawing what you see and you're translating it from your eye to your hand to the paper. And I go, I'll keep that up because it's true. Not everybody can do what you can do. So keep it going.
Yes. Oh man, that's such a unique, that's so true because I get a lot of, there's been a kids showing me their work and a lot of it is like the anime trace over stuff. And so when you do see that kid that's drawn from life, you're like, whoa, okay, this is a God-given talent that needs to be pressed to the top. Like he needs to have that float to the top and hopefully he has someone in his life to encourage him. So I love that you did that for the dad because I'm sure the dad was like, who knows what the dad's thinking. I know my parents were super supportive of my career. If you don't mind me asking, were your parents supportive of like you being in the arts industry, or were you like more into the hot rod thing when you were a kid, or how does your family play into your career?
Well, my dad was a artist and an art director, and he had his own small ad agency business. He did catalogs for like Dempsey Wilson cams and Webco motorcycle accessories. And so I knew how to set type and I knew how to take pictures and cut amber lists and make production because I saw him do it. He did little fun little drag race drawings. His studio was right around the corner from Ed Big Daddy Roth, and they were friends. And my dad placed all the ads that my dad didn't draw any of the ads. Robert Williams drew that. Newton, he drew it. It's like he had artists draw them, but Edward Roth would give my dad the ad and say, "Here, stat them, size them, get them in all the magazines," and he got like a 15% media commission. And my dad said, Ed Roth was like super cool. He could have done that himself. The magazines would have done that for him. But he always said Ed was like a real generous guy, like a really cool guy. And I
Yeah.
met him when I was a little kid. He was working on that bike truck called, so there's an M on the grill and they called it Megacycle now, but originally that was called Missing Link. And we had Ed Newton's drawing in our living room because my dad had to make a stat of it. And Ed Newton had this great like pen. He designed like 90% of those Ed Roth shirts were Ed Newton, I'm sure. And it was like
Really?
pen and ink. And then he would dab little white highlights on the edges of the exhaust pipe and like make it sparkle. But I
Yes.
remember as like a little kid, I was like 10 or whatever. I'm like looking at it going, he got that effect by dabbing a little white mark on a pipe to make it look like a highlight. I remember thinking as a kid, like, that's cool. So I do have that background and I did come from that. And it served me well. But like I said, I kind of got down the advertising route and I got down a career that was different than what I'm doing now and what
Of course.
he was doing. And my dad was a drag racer. He's all little roadsters that he would cut up and weld together and cut. He was most like, I don't know what he called it a roadster, but it was a rat rod or it was a jalopy or I don't know what you call it today, but it was he just called him he went drag racing with his buddies. And
Wow.
so I grew up going to all these California drag strips, Fontana and Colton and Pomona and later Irwindale and Lyons and Orange County. So I was a little kid going with my dad to these drag races. So that's why when I started my scratchboard career, I went back to all the cool things that I was drawing when I was 12 years old, hot rods, motorcycles. So that's a little bit of a background, but of how I got into it. Yes, they were very accepting of what I was doing.
Wow, I am so glad I asked that. I almost did not. And I'm like, I had no idea that was your background. When you say set type, you mean by actual, you mean by actual letter type, like where they have each letter on a block, or and then they're pushing it through a press, or how? What do you mean set type?
Well, it's specking type. It's like looking at a paragraph and having a written word, counting the characters, and every font has a certain number of characters will fit within a certain depth of picas, and it's all math. So it's like that font will fit in that space, and it's 10 point. Or there's too
I,
much copywriter. You're gonna have to cut some of that out because it's not going to fit in this layout that I created. And then
oh
send
my
it out to the
gosh, I didn't even know
typographer,
that's how it worked.
the typographer, and they would set the type on a sheet, and then your paste up artist would cut out and then lay down the paragraph of typeset font into the space that you've created, and then
Wow.
cut individual letters in a headline because you always want the font, you want to space it a little bit, get all the letters closer to each other. So there's a
Yeah, what
real
is
art.
that called? A kerning?
Turning, yeah.
Kerning.
But
Yeah.
now, of course, it's done the way it is on. We could do anybody on a Mac and set a headline and track it and all that. But no, back in the day, my dad did it and he showed it to me and taught me, and it's kind of how I got going. And I did graphic design for Chrysalis Records and like Blondie's Parallel Lines album was one of the first things I worked on, where we did a cutout of her standing in front of those black and white lines and statting the logo and adding the type. It was all such a mechanical process
Mm.
that I just loved. And that's why art directors are well paid. And that's why there weren't a lot of us at the time. But now it's just changed so dramatically. Like mostly anybody can do what I used to do it back in the day.
Oh, that's so sad to think. I mean, I guess it's bittersweet, I guess. I mean, I know it obviously helps I don't know. I have a negative mindset on how things have changed because look at how many people it employed and how many people had to like learn a trade back then on certain things. You know, not everybody could do everything. Like I feel probably that photographers feel the same way when, now we all are photographers. It's the kind of the same concept. We got an
Well,
iPhone, so we're a photographer.
it is, and I try to look at it from a positive standpoint also because we had the internet and because we could scan our work and promote it on Instagram and Facebook and on blogs and with email campaigns. Like I always marvel the fact that my stuff is getting out to the world. I mean, I'm doing an original now for a guy in Germany, and I'm doing another one for a guy in, I think, Texas. And I think he's from Texas. I'm working with a band in Oregon for a CD cover. Like these are three projects I'm working on right now today. I would never have met these people uh, ordinarily except by the internet.
Yes.
And and people appreciate that my work is handmade, and you as well, because we're painting and scratching and creating original art. There's more value put on old school things than there are something done in Illustrator or a logo or a design, derivative or based on an existing logo. There's a real way to approach graphic design these days. And I understand it. There's a lot of people that do it really well.
Oh, of
But
course, yeah.
like going the other way, going back to old school handcrafted scratching or painting or carving with a knife or taking a picture with a camera with a time exposure, there is an appreciation for that. And yet we're using all this new technology to promote ourselves. I'm still on Facebook and Instagram, and I got a website to sell it and so forth. So I sometimes try to look at it in the most positive sense that we're using the new medias to promote ourselves and sell ourselves.
I know it can definitely get depressing when you look into the future and you're thinking, for me anyway, I'm like, gosh, where does my craft stand, like I don't sometimes I wonder, and you're right. I think once that stuff gets propped up and it has its own category, like it just makes what we do a little bit more valued, hopefully anyway. There's going to always be people that value certain things. It's like kind of in the car industry, people are going to value like an EV car, but there's also going to be people that are always going to value like a carbureted classic.
Well, that's a good point. It's probably why we appreciate traditional cars and music
Yes.
and the crafting of pinstriping and hand lettering and sign painters. Like we gravitate toward those people, those craftsmen. I think just something you're just hanging on to something that was really well received, well crafted, well
Hmm.
done, that
Hmm.
that I admire.
Absolutely. Well, let me wrap this up. There was another quote on your website that inspired me. Y'all need to visit this man's website. It's very inspiring. He has a very, I love your blog, by the way, because it's very like short and to the point, and a paragraph, but it's just enough to be like, that's a cool piece of art, that's a cool collaboration or something. But anyways, this one quote that I saw on your website says, if you make art or any creative content, my only advice is to do it. And I love that. It's so simple. And I wanted to see if you had anything else to add for like a creative entrepreneur. We've talked about a lot of great things, but do you have any advice for somebody maybe that's starting out? I think a lot of people don't talk to the people that are like in your shoes where they're changing a career. You went from a very successful, it sounds like a very successful career doing what you were doing, and then you decided I'm going to be a full-time artist, and you were an older man at that point. Like, do you have any advice for somebody like someone older?
Anybody older, I mean, just absolutely do it and go forward. Like, we have our savings accounts, we raised our kids, we have our house. Like, there's no really excuse tying you back, holding you back. And I'm at this point in my life, my friends, they're all like in their 60s, and they're complaining they want their old jobs back. Back. They want their parking spot. They want their view. Uh, they want their old bodies back. I mean, they want everything the way it used to be, but that's not coming back. And we're just a different point in our life now. So my advice to my own friends is like, no, this is our time to do the thing that we always thought we wanted to do, but we never had the time to do it. So just do it. I mean, this is that time. And if you like horses, board them. If you like trees, plant them and open a nursery. Whatever it is, that thing that you always thought you could do. In my case, I would go to contemporary art museums, and when we travel, every town, when I'd be on business, like if I had a free day, I'd always just go to the art museum. I'd look at stuff, at contemporary art especially, like I always think I could do that. I mean, I would honestly believe I could do that because it didn't look that hard, but I never actually did it. So this for me is about developing my craft and proving to myself and actually following up on getting better. So anybody older, I absolutely just say do it and open door and see where it goes.
Yes.
Because when I first started, I had a lot of people help me. Max Grundy was one that came out and just gave me the name of every magazine editor and their address and their shirt side and said, send them a shirt, let them know you're out there, and you'll create some interest. Zombie editor, he was editor of Rod and Culture before it became Speed and Culture, did a nice write-up and promoted me pretty good. Anna Marco put articles in Old School Rods and Car Culture Deluxe. And I mean, there were people that really helped me. And I asked Max, Max, why are you going out of your way to help me? And John Mearns, again, he gave me all the grid wall of my booth because he had extra grid walls. And he pointed out to me, he goes, no, Bo, it's not competition. You and I could sit up side by side and we can't sell anything to anybody. They got to look at it and want it and just buy with their, what strikes them or buy with their heart. It's not competition, it's community. We could both be set up side by side and both do well. And it always kind of struck me as there's no reason to be competitive. There's no reason to want somebody to not succeed because we have no control over it other than look professional, shoestring inventory, and just present it the best way you can and be nice as you can about it. And that's all we can control. And beyond that, doors open and people are supportive and help you. So I would advise anybody, later in life, absolutely do that thing that you always thought you could do, because this is that time, and use that wisdom and use the ability to just be nice to people, talk to people, and present your stuff well. You don't know what doors will open after that.
Oh, I love that, Bo. Thank you so much for your wisdom and sharing that with us. It's late tonight, but man, I'm like so inspired. It's always hard for me to like calm down and go to bed after these things because my mind is just reeling after we have conversations like this.
Cool. Yeah, I enjoy it.
Thank you for being here tonight with us. And once again, this is BOMONSTER. We appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Curated Craftsman podcast.
Yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned it, but my website is BOMONSTER.com.
There you go. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to The Curated Craftsman. You can support this podcast and become a member of our creative community through the Hand, Head, and Heart Collective on Patreon. If you were inspired by this conversation, please leave a review, share the show, and subscribe.